I'll call this regional council meeting to order. Please be advised that tonight's meeting is available for the public to attend virtually, is being streamed and recorded. Should virtual attendees wish to address council during either the public comment period or the question and answer period, use the raise hands feature on your webinar controls. When it's your turn and are prompted, unmute your microphone, state your name, and ask your question. Once your question is ended, you'll be muted again. I have no additions. Are there any council additions? Are there any CAO additions?
No, Mayor.
Very well. Can I get a motion, please, to adopt the agenda? Moved by Councillor Andrews, seconded by Councillor Roper. All those in favor? Carried. Adoption of the minutes for the special regional council meeting of October 19th, the special regional council meeting of October 25th, and the regional council meeting of October 25th. I get a motion, please, to adopt those minutes. Moved by Councillor Soul, seconded by Councillor Roper. All those in favor? Carried. Are there any virtual attendees who wish to comment on tonight's agenda? Very well, thank you. Administration report number 73, Fort Nelson Snowmobile Club. Ms. Jacobs.
Hello, Mayor and Council. This report provides an update regarding the Fort Nelson Snowmobile Club. At the April 12th, 2021 Special Regional Council meeting, the Fort Nelson Snowmobile Club provided an update and presentation on their club and ongoing activities. Following the presentation, Regional Council requested that staff investigate what commitments were made by past councils around compensation to user groups as a result of the acquisition of some off-road vehicle trails during the construction of the community trail. And council also asked that staff research possible solutions to address some of the snowmobile club's concerns. So in reviewing the work and records of past councils, it's certainly clear that ORV users in our community have been impacted by the construction of the community trail. And in response to some concerns that have been raised by off-road vehicle users, the municipality has taken several steps over the years to support these user groups. In particular, helping ORV users establish the foundational aspects of tenure and legal authority to build and manage access to motorized trails in the area. So you'll see in the report before you today, we've included a table that summarizes some of the key supports and commitments that past councils have provided to ORV user groups. So as you see, the table begins in 2007 and goes through till 2016. So in addition to the supports that are outlined in this table, it's also noted that the Snowmobile Club received funding through the municipality's discretionary grants and aid fund in 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2019. And we've also noted that staff often provide technical support to the Snowmobile Club. An example of such would be help submitting various applications to the province or funding for funding organizations. And so going forward, looking at possible solutions to assist the Snowmobile Club, and the NRM has the option to help the club identify grant opportunities going forward, as well as support in the preparation of grant applications that the Snowmobile Club may wish to prepare. We also have the opportunity to encourage the club to continue applying and accessing our annual discretionary grant and aid program. And lastly, we do have the option to offer ongoing support, so say more technical expertise offered by staff to the Snowmobile Club as needed. And in closing, we've noted in the report that NRM involvement in any more significant potential trail maintenance would likely be at council's discretion and to be reasonably based on scope, cost, and availability of resources and capacity.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Jacobs on this? Councillor Penny.
I'm going to start off and thank you very much for a great report. Can't imagine how much reading you had to be involved to pick out all of these things that have happened over the years. It was eye-opening to me. I really appreciate how much help it looks like there's been given to the Snowmobile Club. And I'd just like to say that I'd hope that the involvement that has happened will continue. And well, I guess I can't really mention, but once we get to all user groups and whatever, maybe some things will change for these groups. But if there is anything that the Snowmobile Club came forward to staff with, if the staff felt it was something that we could accomplish reasonably, I would hope that they would bring it to council for approval and not just snuff it out. If maybe we could help them out. Anyway, again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Penny. Any other comments? Councillor Gerwin.
Yeah, my compliments on a great report. So I have 2 points. The first one being that on the second page, it says staff have been working with the club on items of note in terms of you guys did a tour of the concerns that the Snowmobile Club presented in their presentation. And it says that on items of note and have in past provided in-kind support to address access and maintenance issues where possible. So I'm just wondering what action have we taken in support of the Snowmobile Club to address those concerns that they brought forward regarding the trail? Do you know?
Well, from my understanding, our former director, Doug Toft, took leadership on this file. And I believe in late spring of 2021, he did conduct a tour guided by the Snowmobile Club of their current trail network. I think this provided Doug an opportunity to see firsthand what assets they have and what areas of their trail network they would be looking to improve or perhaps look at options to expand going forward. At that time, I was not directly involved on that project, so I would have more limited knowledge of maybe some of the learnings that Doug had gotten through those tours.
Okay, I'm just, if you remember, I just remember the picture that was up on the screen that they showed us, that big, huge sinkhole and wood sticking out all over that we all felt was a danger. So I don't know, I thought maybe we were going to look at where we could provide support to get that fixed. And did we do that?
I'm not aware if we actually did anything specific to that, Councillor Grewing. Some of the challenges with some of the areas are some significant in-kind support would be required. So I don't think there's been any, I'm not sure if any movement to that. We can circle back with the Snowmobile Club, but some of the areas might require work with some machinery, equipment, culverts, drainage, the whole works, which starts to extend what we can provide as in-kind support. We really start crossing that line there, which is the reason why at the tail end of the report, if there's any significant amount we go back for council approval. Things in the past we've done is provided, for example, access ways to the highway. We've helped assistance installing signs, or we've had shortened stubbed culverts to allow to cross a ditch to get across the highway to connect their other areas of the trail, for example. But some of the areas on the trail itself, the Snowmobile Trail, when it's used in the summer months by the ORVs or by quads, have some significant work that most likely would be required to fix some of the holes because of just drainage issues.
Councillor Penny.
Just like to add for your information, I do believe that there has been some significant work done to that particular area. I'm pretty sure I'll have to consult with them to make sure, but I'm pretty sure they got some help from construction companies here in town. I really don't think that the area that this would have been in for us to try to send town equipment out there, I think would just be, I mean, the cost could escalate. But the type of equipment we have, I think we can help around where they can reach from roadways to get into through there, though I don't think we'd have the equipment. And I do believe that they did manage to get some work done this summer. I will confirm for sure for you though.
Mr. Barry, did we not do some technical work to help them secure tenure on some of their trails as well?
Yeah, that was all previous work that was done in the past for sure, Mayor, but specific to any upgrades or changes, I'm not sure specific to that area. Because Councillor Penny's correct. Fair amount of work will be required to access some of those areas and fix them up.
Mrs. McIver.
So some of the things that that Doug had noted on his tour with the snowmobile club were pretty minor in nature, like move this concrete meridian to provide a wider access point, do some repairs to a berm that we have down in the South Industrial. So those were pretty easy things to address. Yeah, they weren't like the major projects that we'd seen in the slideshow. So so they were, it was interesting that the big stuff that was highlighted in the meeting wasn't in that list of notes of Doug's, but maybe because they encountered some help otherwise. So.
Councillor Goodwin.
Yeah, and then, thanks, Mayor. To my other point, it's like at the beginning of the report, it says that the Snowmobile Club is seeking support from the NRM to help the club identify joint funding opportunities, which is part of the recommendation for moving forward. Submit grant applications, which again is in the movement forward, but then it says facilitate trail maintenance. And I don't see that addressed at all in the analysis, other than if that's what we're gonna do, that's a huge scope. So I just feel that I think we need to be upfront with the Snowmobile Club. Like, they've asked us for these 3 points and we're going to deal with 2 of them. And if we're not going to deal with facilitating the trail maintenance, then we need to be clear on that. Yeah, and then what exactly do they mean by facilitate? Like, maybe they don't want us to do it, but maybe they, I don't know what, because facilitate can mean many different things. So that was the point there that I'm just not clear on, would like some more information on what exactly they're expecting.
Thank you. Ms. McIver.
One of the things that Gabrielle and I discussed when we were going through the report and was just around working a little more closely with the club to potentially develop a bit of an annual work plan so that we know where we need to put our resources to support them, whether that's more tenure discussions or if that's actual, capital work that they want to undertake. And so that we can say, yes, that's something we can provide in kind. It's moving a concrete block 3 feet over, or it's, a pretty massive undertaking to repair a trail. And I think just doing some of that planning work with them will hopefully be helpful to both groups. And that will give, whether there's that, identifying a project for a grant opportunity or something that we can reasonably provide in kind. But right now it's all very ad hoc when the requests come in. So I think in future discussions, it would be worthwhile to just look at working together to develop a bit of an annual plan.
So do you want that in some sort of a motion then, moving forward, or is that?
We need them to be a willing participant in that annual plan development.
So Councillor Goring, did you want to make a motion that we reach out to the Snowmobile Club and ask for meetings annually to discuss their needs, I guess?
Councillor Penny, what do you think? You're more in the know on this one than me.
I actually not prepared to make a motion myself right now. It would be nice to have some more discussion with them and make a plan going forward before I just throw out a motion for staff to, they're taxed enough. So I definitely want to make sure that we headed in the right direction. So I'd be more than glad to meet with them myself and bring back some information to council.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
If there's nothing else, we'll move on to administration report number 74. Caribou recovery, predatory management update. Ms. Jacobs?
This report pertains to caribou recovery and predator management within the NRM. And so at the last council meeting in September, council had requested that staff submit a response regarding the BC Caribou Recovery Program. And in formulating this response, council asked that staff connect with regional stakeholders to determine their position on this recovery program and then comment accordingly. So since this last council meeting, staff have spoken with representatives of both Fort Nelson First Nation and the Fort Nelson Trappers Association regarding the BC Caribou Recovery Program. And through these discussions, we've had the opportunity to better understand what these stakeholders, how these stakeholders view this Caribou Recovery Program. Generally, both Fort Nelson First Nation and the Fort Nelson Trappers Association advocate that the provincial government better engage First Nations governments and trappers concerning predator management. And so based off the feedback that we'd received from Fort Nelson First Nation and the Fort Nelson Trappers Association, we've recommended that the municipality submit a letter to the BC Caribou Recovery Program in addition to completing the program's online feedback form, as we feel that submitting a letter would better allow the organization to express the views of council while considering the input received from Fort Nelson First Nation and Trappers Association. So should council wish to submit such a letter, we anticipate the letter would offer broad support for continued predator management to support caribou recovery within the region. And the letter would likely encourage the provincial government to more closely engage and collaborate with First Nations governments, Trappers Associations, and regional governments regarding its actions to manage predators in the area. And lastly, we would anticipate the letter would recommend the provincial government clarify what actions will be taken to support caribou recovery in the long term.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Jacobs? Very well, hearing none. I understand that the form the BC government has for feedback is not very inclusive and doesn't actually capture most of the concerns that the Northern Rockies has regarding the caribou management program. So I would make the motion that the Northern Rockies municipality submit a letter to the BC Caribou Recovery Program that outlines the views of council around province's engagement with First Nations and regional stakeholders, and the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality complete the BC Caribou Recovery Program online feedback form. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Souls. Any comments? All those in favor? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Souls.
I think that this is a really good reminder. It seems, in my viewpoint, I think it's important that we continually remind the provincial government, and in this case where it overlaps with the federal government, to remind them that their caribou are wandering around inside of our municipal boundaries, and that it's important that we do be part of the conversation. So that's why I definitely support.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? All, very well, thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Jacobs, for that.
Miss, 1 second. Councillor Roper, were you opposed or are you in favor?
No, I was in favor, just a little late on the ball, sorry.
Okay. Okay. No, okay.
Very well, moving on. Administration report number 75, pound keeping services. Ms. Shepherd.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this report comes to you tonight in follow-up of ongoing work to address animal welfare concerns in the NRM. At the September council meeting, an analysis of services currently provided within the pound keeping and animal control contracts was reviewed, and one of the requests of council at that time was to explore options for increased service levels within the pound keeping contract. So through discussions with the current pound keeper, it was confirmed an opportunity exists to amend the existing contract to include additional services at the current rates. Those additional services include public drop-off of animals. Establishing that service provides a mechanism to manage owner surrender situations, and it also provides an avenue to address complaints and concerns that would be arising from outside of the current animal control boundary. And the other additional service would include the formal coordination of the adoption or sale of pets impounded longer than a 72-hour period. So upon council's direction, staff can work with the contractor to develop and implement processes for the remainder of the contract term, which is ending in January 2023. And additionally, the existing provisions for out-of-community veterinarian care that are currently in the contract could be adjusted to include accessing local veterinarian services where possible. Staff are currently still working to address administrative deficiencies and efforts to improve dispatch of animal control services, as well as continuing to engage with licensed kennel operators to undertake a cost analysis for a more fulsome animal shelter services. So the options before you are that the pound keeping contract be amended to include allowance for public drop-off of animals, provisions for extended boarding fees at a rate of $25 a day, and the coordinating of the adoption or sale of pets impounded longer than a 72-hour period, or that no contract amendments are undertaken at this time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Shepherd? Councillor Gerwing.
Thanks, Hillary, for that report. It's great. So a couple of questions is is there going to be a maximum boarding fee? Because if more pets are surrendered, or if we which we had not long ago, a whole pile of cats that were needed to be taken somewhere. So a $25 a day per animal could add up pretty quickly, I'm thinking. And so are we thinking that we're going to have a maximum amount, or are we just leaving that open-ended?
Ms. Shepherd?
That's a good point. That would be up to council's discretion for sure. As you're aware, the 72-hour impoundment was put on hold. So that does present some challenges, given sometimes there are animals that are impounded that may not be adoptable. They may be feral, old, sick.
So I see as a concern before I would be able to vote on that motion, because I would be very concerned to leave that open-ended like that. And then I just would like some more information on the veterinary services. Like you mentioned that there's something currently in the contract regarding veterinary services, and I'm sorry, I'm not informed as to what that includes.
The current contract provides for out-of-town veterinarian care when necessary at a rate of $500 per trip, plus veterinarian fees.
And the municipality covers those costs?
Yeah, that's in the current contract.
So again, that is a concern for me, is if we're accepting more animals, because we all saw what happened with the not-for-profit society that was doing that. And so I think it could, I'm not saying it shouldn't get done, I'm just concerned about how costly that might be. And I have been speaking with somebody in the community that's very interested in supporting emergency animal care, like financially supporting that. So there might be an opportunity for some sort of a partnership. Like, I don't know if a not-for-profit could be created in terms that would be fundraising for that specific medical care. And then if the pound is increasing their service level, like that's a really great thing. So, but yeah, I don't know. What does everybody else think with the cost?
Any other comments? Councillor Penny?
It is concerning to me as well, like in light of the situation that we run into just recently, to not have any sort of cap on it. But at the same time, which, is it nine animals come in and the 11th one, we shut the door. So it's really difficult decision to make there. I'd have a tough time with this information to decide. least come up with some sort of guidelines as to how much we're going to expose the municipality to. I mean, I honestly wouldn't have even been that fearful of it if we didn't just find 100 and some dogs in a trailer in town. I can't imagine what that would end up costing if the municipality had to take that on the taxpayer. So I don't have any answers. I just have more questions.
I guess my concern is what do we do if we don't do that? I mean, tomorrow, if we found 100 animals, something has to be done with them. And if they require veterinary care, someone has got to pay for it, or they have to be euthanized. I mean, I have some dollar concerns as well, but getting back to Councillor Gerwing's point about having a nonprofit group raise money and maybe be an umbrella, I guess I would say, for some of these concerns about the pound and looking after animals and so on and so forth, I think is a good idea.
If I could just add in there that within the current pound keeping contract, with the 72-hour hold on impounding animals, there's sort of an avenue there for a bit of administrative discretion in if an animal may not be suitable for adoption, then it might be up to the pound keeper to determine. The same with veterinarian services, whether that's necessary or not. There's a certain level of discretion that the pound keeper could employ to make such decisions. And also just to add that the option before you would be considered one step in a multi-layer situation.
Very well. Is there any more comment? Councillor Andrews? No?
Yeah. So I like that idea. I was trying to think on how we could discuss this with the pound keeper, and maybe there is an easy way forward. Like, I guess we got to account for anomalies for sure, but there might be something that the pound keeper has in mind already. We could be scratching our heads here thinking of an idea, and they're like, well, and they might have an idea for us. So maybe we can just talk to them.
Councillor Gerwing.
And on the other point, that staff are working to improve administrative processes to provide for alternative and more responsive dispatch of animal control services. So do we have a timeline on when we might see what those efficiencies are, or can you describe any efficiencies or improvements, I guess would be a better word, to the service, or when we might expect that?
I believe work is ongoing with bylaw to hopefully change the way that dispatch is being undertaken currently. I would welcome a resolution with a timeline. If that's what you would wish, then that would provide some direction for us to move forward.
Mr. Barry, any comments?
Just wondering if council would like us to bring back a report with some estimated costs. An option could be to proceed, because right now there's no other avenues locally. And as Hillary mentioned, there's kind of a bit of a phased approach in terms of what we're looking at. We're looking at options based on council's previous direction, because we never had, there isn't, previously, and I guess currently, there's not necessarily adequate services in town, especially with Takashi closing. So I just wonder if council, and one option could be we can bring back some costs, look at some ideas, some thoughts in terms of mechanisms that could come in or kick into play if a situation that's unforeseen occurs, i.e., 100 animals or something like that, or if the pound starts to get overwhelmed over time because you can't find every home. So we can bring that back with some ideas with council, for council.
Councillor Souls.
I think that this is actually timely, and I saw the report as a phased approach. It actually addresses the immediate need, and the fact the pound keeper is willing to add these services in is a good an indicator of the community spirit that they have and so on. But it's also an indicator that the pound has been underutilized for a long, long time because of its relationship with the caches and so on. So I think that it's a step in the right direction, and given that the contract with the pound has one more year in it, this is an interim measure, and we should be discussing how to taking a good solid look at the whole pound contract in the future, in a year from now. So I think that's an approach that could work.
Councillor Penny.
I was just gonna, I mean, looking at the way everything is now, really, if we were to take this option that's laid out in front of us, the only thing that's changing is the coordinating and adoption of sale of pets, because we've already belayed the 72-hour, right? Pets can, animals can stay there longer than 72 hours now currently, and we would be paying the $25 a day as per the current contract, correct? So that really the only change we're making today would be that they're actually going to help in the coordinating adoption sale of pets impounded, right?
Councillor Gerwin.
The way I understand it currently, the pound is not accepting
Not accepting.
animals that are surrendered, or, you know, that 72-hour, $25 a day boarding fee that we are currently paying for is for animals that have been apprehended by our animal control services and taken to the pound. So, you know, the amount of animals that went through to caches is like a lot when you think about $25 a day. Not to say that we shouldn't, but just let's not confuse the two of them.
Are there any other comments? Very well. I'm going to make a motion that we accept the recommendation and that we ask administration to bring back a report on further steps within, Mr. Barry, what would be reasonable? 60 days, 90 days?
That's a loaded question. We can say 60 days. I mean, the reality, it's an ongoing process that we're looking at, similar to what we're looking at with the actual administrative side with the animal control. So if you put a target timeline, we'll bring back whatever we have at that time here.
Okay, perfect. So I'll make the recommendation that the pound keeping contract be amended to include the allowance for public drop-off of animals, provisions for extended boarding fees at a rate of $25 per day, and the coordinating of adoption and sale of pets impounded longer than 72 hours, and that administration brings back a report within 60 days on further steps. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Souls. All those in favor? That motion carries. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Please record Councillor Gerwin as opposed. Very well. Moving on, administration report number 76, Environmental Advisory Committee for discussion.
Hi, so this report comes to you from the last council meeting where it was requested that staff explore the opportunity to establish an environmental advisory committee. As discussed in the report, committees are established at the direction of council, and they're based on fulfilling council's goals in alignment with priorities. Advisory committees provide an opportunity for like-minded interests to collaborate and further specific initiatives. An environmental advisory committee would strive to gather folks with shared passions and knowledge in environmentalism to advance the NRM's goals in promoting sustainability and waste diversion in the Northern Rockies. So an EAC, as we would call it, would exist to investigate ideas and solutions and provide advice in the form of information, options, and recommendations to council on topics such as waste diversion, energy efficiency, climate change, green technology, other environmental matters, and emerging issues referred by council. A broad membership of individuals from a range of fields would invite diverse collaboration in promoting environmental sustainability while supporting economic growth opportunities in keeping with the unique culture of the NRM. So an example of a draft terms of reference is attached as a starting point for discussion, and it's based on the scope of similar committees and other communities. It's suggested that the terms of reference be reviewed and finalized after an EAC has been established. And to be responsive to council's needs, it is suggested that a frequency of reporting on committee progress is required. In other communities, similar committees are typically made up of 7 to 11 voting members and are appointed by council through an application process, usually done through a skills-based analysis of applicants. In the NRM, past committee membership has been filled by both a public call and direct invitation of applications. And typically, committees of council are chaired by a designated member of council in the Northern Rockies, where in other communities, the chair and vice chair are selected by committee members once appointed. So your options tonight are to establish an environmental advisory committee with a determined number of voting members, the chair of the committee, and the process by which members will be appointed, or to defer the establishment of such a committee at this time.
Thank you. Any comments?
This is a very thorough report. Thank you kindly. It's more thorough than I was imagining as I was thinking about it when we talked about it we talked about its function in the earlier meetings. I realized that this is a very comprehensive look at how we could set up an environmental committee for the whole municipality and encompass all of its areas. But I know that in our earlier discussion, it sprang out of waste diversion and landfill issues and collection of organics and so on. So it'd take me a while to get my head around all of what this could constitute here. This is a fairly very established, a very far-reaching committee if it's given the role that I see written here. So I'd like to just see it actually pared down to meet the needs of what we have as current issues like landfills.
Very well. Any other comments? So I'll make a comment. Councillor Souls, I hear what you're saying, and I guess I'm not opposed to that. I know we have other environmental issues. For instance, I was thinking of water rate, water metering, to prevent the waste of water. And I think there's other things that can come along as well as landfill. But in order, we can always narrow the scope of the committee to begin with. And if in the future we decide we want to expand that, we have the option of doing that in the future as well. So perhaps we should make a motion then to have this committee only look at landfill related issues with an idea of expanding it perhaps in the future. Are there any comments? Councillor Penny.
I don't really see any advantage to limiting them right out of the box and, get this committee up and going and they can kind of prioritize their direction from there, in my mind. I'd hate to just set them with one thing, take care of the landfill right now. We don't know who's going to end up sitting on this board and what expertise they may bring to whatever avenue. So we wouldn't want to limit.
The scope before us here is pretty broad, where it says climate adaptation, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, energy efficiency. It is a pretty broad scope. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I think these are all good objectives. I'm just not sure if we want to do that in the beginning with just in the initial stages of setting this up. Councillor Gerwing, do you have some comments on this?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I would be really hesitant to narrow the scope of the committee. Like, I think having a broader scope would attract more people to be involved in it. And that said, we all know how long it takes for groups to form and go through that whole process. And because you have a broad scope doesn't necessarily mean in year one you're going to be looking at climate change actions, right? Year one, we might be looking at waste diversion. I think it really is incumbent upon who's there, the facilitator, the staff that's assigned, and what goals have to be connected back to the strategic priorities of council, right? Like that's really, really important. So that has to be the tie. And I think that that would also be, that would give the committee the ability to say, yeah, looking at this aspect of climate change is really important. However, it's not necessarily meeting with the strategic priorities of council, right? So then that kind of gives you that ability to say, yes, that's important, but not necessarily where we're going right now.
I guess also it's an advisory committee. So when it comes back to council,
Exactly.
it is up to council whether to take the advice of the advisory committee. So if it is maybe a bridge too far, we can always say not at this time. Councillor Andrews.
And being that it's something that council is going to look to set up and have people on, I'm sure we can give some sort of direction to start with. Like, here's the plan for this committee. At the moment, we really need help with A, B, and C. Like, not to stifle you as you go, but could you guys maybe help us out with this to start with? Like, I'm sure we can add some direction or recommendation as well, right? To kind of steer them in the way we want, hopefully.
Councillor Roper, any comments?
Yeah, I just want to echo what Councillor Penny said. I'm looking forward to hearing some ideas from the committee members. So I would, I would want to get the committee together and then perhaps finalize, the strategic planning for it.
I think one of the points that was made was trying to get youth on board of this, and I think this is a really great idea of trying to get young people involved in not just this committee, but in local government in its entirety. And I think this is a really good first step, because this is something that I think young people really get behind, and it would introduce them to the whole process of governance. So I think that's a really good thing too. We have here also, there's 3 parts to this membership. There's the voting members, members of council, and non-voting members. Do we have any comment on that, what we would like to see? Personally, I would like to see a smaller number of voting members. I think the low limit that Ms. Shepherd had put on was 7, and 1 council member, and as many non-voting support members as we can get. Anybody else have any comments on that? Councillor Gerwin.
I would respectfully disagree with that. I think that if I'm going to sit on a committee and dedicate my time to it, then I wouldn't necessarily want to be on a committee where I don't have the ability to vote.
Okay.
It would be my hope that if I was involved in this committee, that most, if not all, decisions or recommendations to council would be done through consensus model anyways, and then only using voting as a last resort when consensus can't be achieved. So I think by encouraging everybody to participate, but then only limiting it to 7 or how many can vote, then I think that would be really hard to make work.
So what you're saying is there would be no limit to the number of voting members and 1 councillor, is that correct?
I mean, depending on the wishes of council for sure. But I think what's before us here is like there would be a council representative, there would be a staff representative, and then my own personal perspective would be to open it up to all of the categories that Ms. Shepherd has listed here, and just encourage anybody that wants to participate. That would be what I would like to see.
Councillor Penny.
I would just echo Councillor Gerwing's ideas on that. Knowing how difficult it is to get people to get involved these days, as easy as we can make it, better. And definitely, if they're going to sit around the table, they're going to want to know that their voice counts. They don't want to. I can't imagine anybody wanting to be involved and not feel that their voice is really going to matter.
So, Ms. McIver.
Yeah, I was just going to offer that typically the non-voting support member is your staff support member. And just is there to assist the committee in the coordination of duties rather than lending an opinion or vote.
Very well. So then we would be looking at no limits on the voting members on the committee and one council member. Is there anything else in here for our, before we make a motion that anybody would like to add, subtract?
Danny, I'd like to just
Oh, sorry,
add
Councillor
something to it.
Souls.
I've sat on committees like this too, and it is good when they're fully functional. It's really awesome when they're fully functional. However, however, it's in getting engagement from some of these groups or some of these different types of people groups. Getting engagement is very, very difficult unless it has something to do with their core. I look at industry and industry and forestry and so on, and I look at the various people groups that are mentioned here, and it's hard to get engagement from some. So the risk that you run when you have a wide open door is that you get lots of participation from people who are not involved in these groups, and you bring them into your advisory group, and now you don't have precipitation from the ones that do. So you have to be, you really got to dig to get the right people. And then here, that sounds kind of twisted because we're the ones trying to determine who the right people are. So it's complicated. It's more complicated than just saying, yeah, we're going to form a committee and we'll see if we can get people from these representatives from all these groups, because it's going to be challenging.
Well, I suppose what we could do is we could see how much interest we have from these groups and see how many we can get to join in. And I guess if they're committed enough to join, maybe they're committed enough to participate and provide input into the group. So, Councillor Gerwing, did you?
If I could just make one more comment. I think that the membership list here is put, at least the way I read it, is that this is suggestions, and the way that I see it possibly moving forward, as was done with the Tourism Advisory Committee, is that we put the call out to the public, and in the hopes that we get lots of people interested. And then if we're feeling that we're missing perspectives from some of these organizations that aren't represented, then there's other ways of getting those perspectives too, right? So let's just say that the committee comes up with some sort of a recommendation to go back to council, but they want to check that against a group that isn't represented around the table, then the chair or representative can then, check in with that group to see. So there's different ways of handling either too many people or not enough people, right? So.
Very well. Are we prepared then to make a motion?
Sure, I would make the motion for option number 1.
Although, any other discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Administration report number 77, council conference and travel for discussion. Ms. McIver.
Thank you. So the report's just here before you to consider some of the conferences that are scheduled and are looking hopeful to be held in person for 2022. Just not only to help us from a budgeting perspective, but also to take advantage of early bird registrations and ensuring that rooms are blocked off if there's any in that list that council may wish to attend. There may be some that seem a little foreign because it's been some time since anybody really attended anything, but we did look back in past years, and those were some that council has attended in past. So.
Any comments, councillors? There's nothing on the list here that I wouldn't want to attend, so I guess I'm going to put a check mark beside all of them. And maybe if councillors have an interest in attending some of these, they can contact administration so that we can get in on the early bookings. Very well. Did you need a resolution then?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very well. Administration report number 78, first quarter grant and aid requests. Ms. McIver.
So council has before you the 2 applications received for the first quarter 2022 grant and aid program. It's a little bit different from past years. Usually this time of year, we'd be coming to you and asking for pre-approval for your 2022 budget and allocating the 2022 applications to that budget. However, this year we do have funds left in the grant and aid budget that would make sense to allocate to this year's budget, since there are funds available, and then that would potentially free up the whole budget for next year. I just want to mention as well that it's likely that we'll see a couple more applications trickle in this year. So there are some groups that missed this deadline but have expressed an interest in accessing funds. So we've just encouraged them to get us their application before December, and then hopefully we can get those through as well. We haven't tended to stick to the program explicitly because we know that funds are hard to come by these days. So we do encourage them to apply throughout the year, not necessarily adhere to the deadlines that we've put in our program. So.
Very well. Are there any questions from Ms. McIver? Very well. I'll entertain a motion then.
Recommended motion, sorry. Perfect. I'll make the recommended motion, please.
Oh, do I have a second for Councillor Andrews' motion? Seconded by Councillor Penny. All those in favor? Carried. Administration report number 79, commemorative naming of parks, features, or facilities for discussion. Ms. Hanson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. At the September 27th Regional Council meeting, Council heard a request from the public to rename the Rotary Spray Park. And Regional Council requested at that time that staff find some information regarding the dedication of memorial renaming or naming of parks and municipal assets. So this report provides information on policies of other jurisdictions that we have sourced, and also a bit of history as to how we have named parks in the past. The items provided as listed from the other municipalities are those that were seen to be repeated in most of the policies and those that were highly emphasized. And while Cooper family request is still at council's discretion, council may want staff to provide them with a dedication policy coming forward in order to allow them to have guidelines for those that are submitting applications, as well as for council to make decisions on renaming the parks.
Any comments? Very well. I'll make a comment here. I think it would be in our best interest here to have administration come back with some guidelines around those. And I also note that discussions of naming and renaming or dedicating municipal assets is generally considered in a closed meeting. And I think that would be an appropriate way to deal with some of these issues. Councillor Gerwin.
Thanks, Mayor. So while I wholeheartedly agree that we should have staff create policies around naming, I would like to see the Cooper family's request not wait for that policy to be developed. And if council feels that it should be done in a closed meeting, then if we could have that as soon as possible, or if we're willing to talk about it today. Either or.
Very well. It would be my preference that we would talk about it in a closed meeting because it is a sensitive subject. And I think there are other things within the report that is in front of us here that we should consider as well in that meeting as well. Any other comments? Counselor Penny.
I would just echo it. I'd like to see it happen soon, and I would be more than glad to have it in a closed meeting as you requested.
Very well. So I will make a motion that administration bring back some guidance surrounding those. Mr. Barry, did you have something? No? Okay. The administration bring back a report to give us some guidance and that we set a closed meeting for that. Do I have a seconder?
Not me.
Seconded by Councillor Souls. Further discussion. Councillor Gerwig.
Thank you, Mayor. But I wouldn't want us to see on the Cooper request, we're not saying that we're gonna wait. Like, could the Cooper request go on the next in-camera meeting, which should be in 2 weeks, if not before?
I think so. I don't think there should be any problem. These are two separate issues. The guidelines and the request,
Oh, sorry.
two separate. Councillor Penny, any comments? Any other comments? Then I'll call the vote on the motion. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Sorry, Mayor. So the motion was that staff is directed to create a policy around the naming, what's it called? Yeah. Yeah. So that's the motion, right?
Yes,
Okay, yeah.
very well. Moving on, administration report number 80, 2022 acting mayor listing committee and portfolio appointments for decision. So before you is those recommendations. Is there any reason why any of the councillors will be unable to do the acting mayor positions for the dates I specified? Good, all right. Standing committees are accepted by Councillor Andrews, Councillor Souls for emergency program and executive committees. Suitable. And so we need a resolution for the Tourism Advisory Committee.
So moved.
Do I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor Gerwing. All those in favor? Carried. And the Environmental Advisory Committee by resolution, Regional Councillor Gerwing is the primary and Councillor Penny the secondary on that committee, the alternate on that committee. Do you have any discussion? By resolution, you're making the motion, Councillor Andrews, seconded by Councillor Penny. All those in favor? Carried. And the portfolio assignments that follow, there's no objections. Councillor Penny.
Got one, Alaska Highway Community Society. I was actually put in primary on that one, even though that society is kind of in limbo right now. I just wanted to relieve Councillor Gerwig.
I'm sorry, where am I here on the?
49. Other appointments by resolution, number 5, the first.
Okay.
Assignment.
So we're on, right at the moment, we're on the resolution of the environment, or the, okay. We've done the Environmental Advisory Committee.
Tourism.
Now we've done the ones by mayor's appointment, and now we're moving on to number 5, where we require a resolution. So your resolution is that you would become the primary on that one, Councillor Penny?
It actually, I had been, I'm assuming it was just a typo somewhere in the last year, but I just wanted to make sure that was caught.
Very well. That should be switched then. Councillor Gerwing, you're good with becoming the alternate on that?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And the other resolutions or the other appointments, I'll make a motion that those are accepted. Do I have a seconder for that? seconded by Counselor Andrews. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Correspondence. Northern Rockies Regional Municipality letter to Kathy Ulrich, President and CEO of Northern Health Authority. Impacts of the COVID-19 delays, the COVID-19 tests. Received for information. Are there any comments on that correspondence? Councilor Gerwin.
Yeah, what a great letter. Like, I think it really summed up our discussion in such a positive way. And it clearly articulates what we were hoping. So my compliments to whoever wrote it, and I wish I could write like that. But I just wanted to share with council too, that there was a recent news article on how the delay in accessing COVID tests and getting the results. The author felt that that was leading to the continued numbers in the north. So if anybody on council is interested in that article, I can send it to you.
I think I saw that article, Councilor Goering. That's, yes, you're right. Any other comments on the letter to Northern Health? Very well. Council information package received for information October 27th, council information package November 3rd. Councilor Penny. Diversion initiatives, share shed.
Yes, thank you very much. This is something that's been on my mind for quite a while. I guess I hadn't been at the dump, so I kind of forgot about it. But recent trip down there and noticed so many very useful things that I just headed in to either be buried or be crushed in the back end of the dump. And I've visited many communities to the north that have these facilities. I mean, they're called different things, but a share shed, basically an area that people could drop things off that they no longer have a use for, but they feel that there is use left in it that somebody else may wish to use. I did speak with the lovely lady running the scales, it's Jean, and she said that I believe 17 years ago when she started down there, she was told there was going to be a CCAN placed off to the side for exactly that. And so I'd just like to see it happen. So I would hope that we could ask staff to bring back maybe some ideas, because I know it was mentioned that there's different communities, some ideas work, some don't. So if we could get some sort of idea, what would be the best plan forward from staff, that's what I'd like to see. Not sure what everybody else's thoughts are on it.
Any other comments? Councilor Andrews.
Yeah, I definitely think that's something missing at our waste transfer station is a shared shed or a take it or leave it, whatever you want to call it. It's a great idea. We should definitely do it.
Like that as well. Do we want staff to look into this then? Councilor Penny, would you like to make a motion?
I'd make the motion that we'd ask staff to look at different communities and what matrix they use or what setup works, try to determine some sort of idea. I don't want us to go down and reinvent the wheel and set something up for failure. So if we could get some idea.
Do we have a
It's not
seconder
much
for
of a
that?
motion, I guess. It's a blah, blah, blah again. So
Seconded by Councilor Andrews. All those in favor? Carried. Council reports. Councilor Souls.
On November the 3rd, I attended a Zoom meeting with the forest. What did they, just a minute. I'm going to find out what it was actually called. Forest Modernization Zoom meeting. And it was interesting. Typical government looking for information where they create the outline and then you keep your information within their outline and you never do touch any of the real serious things that need to be done in forest modernization. So anyway, I did do some comments. There were some comments of practical applications of changes that could be made in the operation of forest tenures, because really that's what has to happen if you're going to figure out how to have more utilization of all the wood in the forest. Anyway, I had discussions around that and I gave a bit of input, but frankly, it'd be a lot more fun to sit with that same group of people in a room and then give them a 4-hour lecture on what needs to change in the forest tenure world in order to have utilization and so on. But I think it was still fruitful. And our CAO can comment on whether it was or not.
Mr. Barry,
I think it was a good effort by the province to reach out to the various organizations. So it was good. It's something that they've been criticized in the past. And sometimes the discussion doesn't necessarily go where you want. At the same time, I think it was just a good effort. And I appreciate it, to be honest with you.
anyone else? I had a list, but I'm afraid I've left it in my office. But I did attend the meeting that Danny was referring to, and that was really good, and enjoyed it, but I don't have anything else to add to what Danny said. Is there anything else, council? Very well, then I will adjourn the meet. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there any questions from the media? Or the public? You have one hand up.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
How are you tonight?
Good.
Hi, Beth.
Hi. So I have a couple of things I would just like to mention. With my chamber hat, really appreciate the report on the caribou recovery and predation. But I did want to mention that if a letter is going to government regarding consultation with stakeholders, there are others besides the Trappers Association and Fort Nelson First Nation, because this issue also impacts recreational user groups like snowmobile and industry and guide and outfitters. So just want to make sure they're kind of not left out of that discussion because they have important information and input that they can provide.
Thank you for that.
And then with my citizen hat, really excited about the idea of the environmental group and really excited from a personal perspective about the idea of something in the dump area that could be used to share or exchange items that are no longer of use. I think that's a fabulous idea. So thanks very much for bringing that up.
Thank you very much. I wonder if this is where I ask you to state your name and the organization you represent, but I think we'll just pass on that, Ms. Vandersteen. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. That's my fault. I should have asked. We all know who you were. Very well. I'll declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you all.